Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing a winners and losers of last night's draft. And we're not going to talk about the obvious, number one and number two with Cooper and Harper because, those teams were, winners from the lottery. They didn't need those picks and they were, truly blessed to have them. But let's start with, a San Antonio Spurs pick, not the second pick, but the 14th pick when they selected, Carter Bryant out of Arizona. Now, I had him going 10 before the Kevin Durant trade to, the Houston Rockets. And then even with the Kevin Durant trade, I thought he was for sure still going, top 10. So him slipping to 14 was just, a blessing for the Spurs again because now you have Harper and you have Carter, two young guys who have, all the potential in the world. But, Carter has that 3 and D type that you want. He could, he shot 37% from three, and he guarded, the best players in college, and that was his role in the Arizona Wildcats team. And overall, this pick has to be an A plus because a lot of people had him going way higher, and I thought a team would even trade up to select him with feature assets. So the Spurs, getting him at 14, they probably did not think he was going to fall that low. So I give this an A plus. Another winner I have is the Charlotte Hornets because they selected Colin Knippel, with the fourth pick. And honestly, a lot of people thought, this was a reach, but it is not because Colin Knippel, he could space the floor already. And defensively, he's not a traffic cone. He could, hold up his own ground. I think he's going to be a really, really good fit with LaMelo Ball and, Brandon Miller. And I feel like for the longest, they really haven't had a good shooting guard, even drafted a shooting guard. I know they had James Booknight, who they thought were going to be the next big thing, and then Nick Smith Jr., and it just hasn't worked out. And you get a really good guy in Con Nipple on and off the court. But yeah, him spacing the floor with LaMelo Ball, making the right plays, taking charges, a hustle player. At four, I really like this pick. I give this another A. Another winner is the Phoenix Suns with their 10th pick because they selected, Kamal Mali Watch. And I had him going either 8 to Brooklyn or, 9 to the Toronto Raptors. And you having him fall to 10 and you desperate need for a center. And I know they just traded, 5 minutes before they selected, Kamal Mali Watch for, Mark Williams. And now what does that leave you with Nick Richards? Now you have three centers and you don't really have point guards. I just don't see Nick Richards in that rotation, and I think another trade is coming. Hopefully, they don't trade Kamal Mali Watts because I overall like his potential way more than in Mark Williams or in Nick Richards because yeah, he's super young, he's super raw, and you can't teach 7'2", 250, 260. And I think Mark Williams injury prone history. I don't really see him staying there long term, maybe for a season or two. But yeah, overall, I give this a B just because they did trade for Mark Williams, 5 minutes before this selection, but you couldn't pass on, the talent of Kamal Maliwatch and his potential. Now, my final winner from last night is going to be the Washington Wizards with their sixth pick. They selected, Trey Johnson out of Texas. Now, he could be, top three in this draft class, 2, 3 years from now. And we're going to say, how did he fall to number six? Now, I really like this pick because he has a lot of veterans around him and he has, a defensive player of the year, Marcus Smart, a guard where his liability kind of was, Trey Johnson is not a really good on ball defender or, even a good help defender, but offensively, he is gifted. He could, shoot anywhere he wants and make any shot he wants. Yes, the shot selection needs to get better, but you also have veterans like Chris Middleton, and now you also just traded, CJ McCollum. You have all these veterans around him now where he's going to learn and potentially, be that number one option on the team who you thought, Jordan Poole was going to be when you traded him. And you kind of capitalized where, when his value was the highest. So it's not really a bad trade. And you also, off that Kyle Kuzma deal. And yeah, you have a lot of veterans. You selected, a potential, top three in a draft class, and he's overall going to be, a really good player. Maybe in his rookie year, he's not going to have, this breakout year that everyone wants, just because he does have a lot of veterans, and that's going to, benefit him in the future. But overall, I give this a, a B plus. And let's get into some losers for last night's draft. Let's start with the fifth pick, the Utah Jazz, and they selected Ace Bailey. Now, talent wise, Ace Bailey was, the most talented player available at the fifth pick, but I think long term this is not going to age well because his shot selection's just not good. I mean, even his three-point shot, and, I know he was just him and Dylan Harper kinda running the offense and doing kinda whatever they want, and that's why, the team didn't make the tournament, and it was just a bad season for Rutgers overall besides having, 2, talented, freshmen come into this year's draft. But I think long term, this is not gonna be a good fit because he wants to be a number 1 option. This is the reason why he didn't work out for any teams, and he was the only, American, basketball player coming into this draft that didn't work out for any teams because he was eyeing, I think, the Pelicans and the Brooklyn Nets and the Washington Wizards because he wanted to be, a number 1 option or, has as many shots as possible. And I don't think with the Jazz and Danny Ainge and Will Hardy's gonna be able to do that. They're gonna, hey, we get to run this offense. Laurie Marketing's getting paid, 200 plus $1 million. Hey, he's the number 1 option. Give him the ball and then let's work on your stuff, after that. And I don't think, Ace Bailey would like that. You can see it kind of on his his body language on draft night. He was kinda upset and surprised because he didn't believe, he got picked by the Jazz because he didn't work out for the Jazz. Believe he didn't even take any type of meetings for the Jazz. So, yeah, it was shock for him. I think he kinda cheered up when he kinda saw the cameras on him, but, yeah, long term, I do not feel like this pick is gonna age well because, yeah, when it's time to extend him for his rookie deal, can he even decline it? I could see that happening. I mean, it's gonna be a ridiculous contract, obviously, if he's averaging, 16, 18, 20 points, and he's declining, that $192 million or $200 million, deal. But if anyone is gonna do it, I feel like it could be an Ace Bailey because I think he wants to be in a bigger market and obviously be a number 1 option on a team. So I'm gonna give this a C plus just because talent wise, yes, Ace Bailey was the best talent available, but I don't think he's a long-term solution in Utah, and I don't really think a personality of, a Utah fan base is gonna be a good fit for an Ace Bailey. My next loser is gonna be the Chicago Bulls with the 12th pick. They selected Noah Essengay, and I really like Essengay. I had him out of the lottery, really, in my opinion, and I thought they could have used, more of a, a Derek Queen or even a Carter Bryant, but, they took him. He's more of a project player. He needs to gain weight. Obviously, he needs to work on his shot, especially from 3. But yeah, he's a big project player, and I just feel like, you have Montez Muzelis, and I feel like they're kind of similar. And I think he's actually better and more polished offensively right now. And defensively, I think he can be, a really good two-way, potential superstar. I think a star player at least. But yeah, they're similar in height, similar positions. So it's kind of iffy and kind of weird. I don't know how that's gonna fit. I think, obviously Noah Essengay is gonna be more of a project player, maybe a 2-year kind of development and see in his 3rd year. But yeah, also you still have, Patrick, Williams, and you kind of have to get rid of that contract, but no one's gonna get rid of it without touching, future assets. So yeah, the Chicago Bulls need to start, trading more veterans like, Alonzo Ball and Nicholas Vucevic. It's time. It's time to go full tank mode. No more playing tournaments. But yeah, I'm gonna give this pick a, a C plus. My next loser from last night is gonna be, Portland Trail Blazers. They traded for this pick, the 16th pick, and they select Jan Heisen. And to be honest, I don't know too much about him, so I'm not gonna spend too much time on him. But I had to look up film, and I kind of looked up more mock draft, CBS, The Ringer, ESPN, and other small creators, and none of them had him in the first round. And I looked up some second rounds, and I saw his name kind of in the middle, but I just don't know really with the fit because you kind of have a lot of centers. So you have DeAndre Ayton, who still has 2 years left, and Robert Williams, and he's always injury prone. So I don't really see him a long term fit. But you just drafted Donovan Clingan, last year in your first round, and I think he could be your future starting center. And I don't think either one of these guys can play, the power forward. One of them's going to have to be a backup. Now, which one is it going to be? Is this guy going to be more of a 2, 3 year type of player that you're putting in the G League and he's playing against, competition to develop his confidence? I just don't know too much. I'm just gonna give this a, a C right now, maybe a C minus overall. I just don't like the fit on the Blazers just because they have too many centers, and you kind of just traded for Drew Holiday, and that means you kind of want that play-in push. And I thought they were gonna select more of a, a shooter that can help them, like, a Walter Clayton Jr. But yeah, overall, I'm gonna give this a C. grade. My next loser I'm gonna have is gonna be the Boston Celtics, just because I thought they could get, someone more, ready to help the team, just because, Jason Tatum's not gonna really play, and then you kind of traded Drew Holiday, and then you traded Kristaps Porzingis, and you kind of don't have a lot of wing help unless you're gonna, just develop, these young guys that you kind of been stashing away. And you select, Hugo Gonzalez out of Spain, and his stats are not really going to do him justice. I think he's more of a hustle player, but yeah, being the 28th pick to, I wouldn't say contender, because yeah, next year they should not try to compete. I mean, hey, just, play basketball really and see who's going to be, a good fit right now. Obviously, it's Derek White and Jalen Brown, but who else can it be? I don't think Hugo Gonzalez is going to be there, especially with the people you passed on. And I think, Liam McNeely was, the right pick that they should have did, but obviously he went right after, and I really think that's a good pick for, the Charlotte Hornets. That was part of the Mark Williams trade. So instead of the Suns getting him, he's gonna go to the Hornets, and obviously him and Colin Nipple, that's a really good, shooting backcourt. But yeah, overall, I feel like, they could have helped him way more than a Hugo Gonzalez, especially with the Celtics, missing, some wing help and some shooting that they're gonna miss with Jason Tatum out. Overall, I think I'm gonna give this a C minus, because I feel like, McNeely could have helped you way more, and he went right after. I liked it way better. Even if he wasn't gonna be in a long term fit, you could have traded him for, future second round or some cash. I just don't really believe in Hugo Gonzalez that much, but yeah, that's my winners and losers from last night's, first round draft. I'm excited for, the second round today. Let me know what you grade each winner or which loser, and if I missed anyone, or who you think is a winner or who you think is a loser. And thanks for watching, guys, and listening. And I'm excited to do a second round winners and loser too after tonight.